How stressful is it to be a practice owner and a parent at the same time? Even more than a parent, a new mom, a new practice owner. This is Paul Nacho Goodman, hanging with our dentist and colleague, Dr. Delaney Spalding, also Family Feud famous. We will get into Family Feud fame. I was scrolling last night, Delaney, and saw a video that has 404,000 likes from you. We'll say, well, we won't lead with the most exciting thing. We'll save that for later. But Dr. Delaney, what I like you to share is, where our Dental Nachos crew's watching it, and people have been excited to hear about your story. Just kind of orient us as a day in the life of Delaney, just what you do today. We'll start with your past later, but what did you do today?
Today, I wake up at 6 in the morning, get myself completely ready before waking up my son while my husband is taking care of all of our oatmeal and lunch prep.
Oh, nice.
I go get him ready. We all eat breakfast together. We're out the door by 7 o'clock, more like 7:15. I always aim for 7 o'clock.
I like that.
Roll up to the office with my son with me, drop him off with our office support staff, also known as our in-office nanny, Julie, give her the rundown of his morning, and then I head downstairs to start my day. And we have our morning huddle at 7:45, see patients from 8 until noon, and I just finished my lunch. So
awesome. I love that. I love that story to start with. Just so you know, we're watching Dental Nachos TV. I'm Paul, Dr. Nacho Goodman, with Dr. Delaney Spalding, talking about the challenges of being a practice owner, parent, new mom, staying sane and successful. A couple of questions I have already. I always say, Delaney, I don't interrupt. I just interject with good ideas. My wife would agree. Don't ask her, just believe me. But you said so many interesting things already. You roll up to your dental practice, and we'll talk about where that is in a minute, and you hand your toddler to your in-office nanny. Tell us about this in-office nanny position. Where do they take your toddler? I own a dental practice, and I think this is amazingly cool, but I can't even think of a place in my office where we would be able to house a toddler. So tell us.
I will say, I do think that this model is pretty attainable by everyone, with the limiting factor being location. Location does make it harder. I started interviewing or thinking about what I wanted for this position when I was about to go on maternity leave. And while I was on maternity leave, started interviewing for just a spare wheel for our office, someone that could be cross-trained to answer phones. They could do plenty of just office things. You need someone to run to the store, you need someone to go to the post office. They would be our office errand person.
Whatever comes up, they're the whatever comes up coordinator.
Exactly. She is currently very much getting cross-trained in the front desk, and then we're hoping to have her cross-trained with sterilization also, because you never know. If someone needs to be home because they're sick, you need to have extra hands available.
When I joined my dad's practice, I worked with my dad for 11 years, and then you get to work with your awesome mom. It was awesome for me. Sadly, he passed away a few years ago. But when I got to his office, he said, we got a dental assistant for everybody and a hygienist for everybody and 2 front desks. I said, we need an extra person. So I immediately implemented the roving dental support person, because they did everything from back in that day, pull charts. I know nobody has paper charts anymore. You know what you used to be able to do in the olden days, maybe if your mom's watching, if you needed some info, you just open up the chart and in 1 second you saw it. Now I click on 17 screens and still don't get to it. So somehow they think digital charting is better, but I digress. So you hand your awesome toddler to your in-office nanny.
Yep.
Tell us where this is in your practice. Is it upstairs? Is it an extra operatory? Is it a basement? Is it a playroom?
Yes. So I am in a dual use situation, or a dual use. My office is downstairs. There's a gym on one side of us. There's also a restaurant and a nail salon on the other side. We aren't in a strip mall, but I'm in a neighborhood community in the front area where all of the amenities are. Above that are townhomes. So I am very much inside of a neighborhood. And it just so happened that a townhome came for sale when I just found out I was pregnant. That patient was sitting in my chair and said, I live right above you and my knees are just getting too sore to go up those stairs. I'm going to sell my place. And I said, don't say another word. Said, as soon as you're ready, just let me know. And the stars aligned. And I personally, with my husband, purchased the condo. It's not a business expense. We purchased the condo knowing that it was going to fulfill this purpose. But the person who owned my office previously also brought her kids to work with her and just had an unoutfitted treatment room. It's smaller, but she also had a nanny on site. So it can be done in smaller locations, but we have a fully functional 2-bedroom, 2-bath condo that we have as our childcare area.
That's awesome. Your mom or dad said that they didn't have charts when they started in 1994. I give them a lot of credit for chartless. I have patients that have been in our practice since before I was born. So they started in the 1960s. It's crazy. They said, I came here when I was a kid. They're now 82 years old. So we have awesome. So tell us a little bit about the transition, right? So actually, when did you graduate from dental school and which dental school did you go to?
May 18th, 2018. And I graduated from BU, Boston University.
Boston University. And what did you do immediately after dental school? What was your first step?
I immediately joined a dental service organization against my parents' wishes.
I go back to, I always say that this is really the most valuable question a dentist can ask at sea at any age or stage. So I'm very friendly with Mark Costas Dental Success Summit. I go to his event. There's people who own 20 practices. I own 2 practices. Let's say I want to own more. I say, ask them this. What would you do different? Why did you do what you did? And what would you do different? So now bring us back to right after dental school, your first step. You have parents and you have a mom who's a dentist. And they're saying, don't do this. And you did this. Why did you do this? Why did you join the DSO?
I would have not been 25 and thinking I know everything.
I got you. Okay. So that's good.
It really was me saying, this seems like the perfect situation. I want to make it on my own. I want to make my own decision. This person offered me a job. It's the first interview I went on, first job that was offered to me. It didn't seem like a bad idea. And then it was.
And there's, have you seen Hamilton, the play Hamilton? I don't know if you've seen it, but so to start the second act, I've only seen it like 9,000 times. Thomas Jefferson comes back and said, what do I miss? Because he was in France. So this is so valuable to everybody watching in. What did you miss in identifying this job? How did it not meet expectations? How did it become problematic?
I didn't know much as a new graduate in terms of being a dentist because I just graduated. But I was expecting to have a little bit more control over day-to-day schedule, things that happen in the office, even just decisions that were made that seemed very small and affected my clinical stuff and just general well-being and happiness at the office. And those were not my decisions to make. The fact that they were very much the office manager or whoever was above the office manager, because it was a small DSO, it wasn't a super well-known one. And I'm sure there are well-run DSOs. This was not a well-run DSO. It's just those types of things. The things that I missed is the autonomy that I didn't know I needed.
Yeah, I really appreciate you sharing something that's genuine and vulnerable. I work with DSOs, private practices daily. There's great private practices, great DSOs, problematic ones, but it is important to ask, especially as a new dentist or any age dentist, that do I get to make these decisions myself? And if you have a non-dentist impacting your decisions, there can be friction.
You don't know the questions to ask when you're a new dentist. Now I have a list of 1,000 questions I could ask, and I don't feel bad about asking them, but it can feel very intimidating to ask those questions if you're a new dentist.
Yeah, totally. I mean, my brother and I own 2 practices, and our associates can literally ask us a question face to face through FaceTime or text at any time. And sometimes when you work for a large practice that tends to be a DSO, you may never be able to get to that dentist ask. So I appreciate it. So DSO, how long did you do that job for?
I knew I wanted to quit the 3rd day in. So I graduated in May. I think I got my license in June. I was getting married in November and we knew we were moving out of state. So that was also a reason why we weren't planned. I didn't want to join a private practice knowing I was leaving. So I joined a DSO knowing it's not going to be a huge issue if I kind of burn this bridge. So I worked there, I think until mid-October.
Mid-October. And then when you left, where'd you go next?
We moved to Alabama, and Alabama operates at a slower pace than Boston. It took me a little bit longer to get a license just because that's how their board is, and that's fine. But I didn't start working until about February of 2019, and I started working at a private practice. And it had the owner dentist and another associate. And I was the 3rd associate coming in, and it was a solid 2.25 doctor practice, and I was the 3rd doctor in.
So this was a much different environment, but there's something that I want to bring to life here. I call BTL it. You finished one job in October, and it didn't sound like you started till February because of licensing issues. Yeah. How did you afford to pay rent and eat food during that time?
I will say the downsides that come with being a female and a mom and having to balance it all, there are pros. And I married an excellent man who relocated us down to Alabama, had excellent benefits, and also he just graduated with his PhD also. So it's not like I was really slumming it.
Well, you
I
had
was
someone in your life who cared about you eating food and was willing to pay
exactly.
for it. And maybe the tables will turn at some point, and it'll be different later.
He tells me I'm a long-term investment, and I believe in that.
So, but what I think is important is if you were totally single and you had debt, and it's not about that, and you need to pay your rent, you did have a 4-month hiatus from working because of the archaic, horrific ways dentistry licenses its providers. And you and I aren't going to change that in the next 23 minutes. But I want to point out to every
we can
dentist,
comment on it.
yeah, start paying attention to where you need licenses. I'm in Center City, Philadelphia. I teach residents. I go, get a New Jersey and PA license. They say, okay, Paul. Then they don't do it. They hate their job in New Jersey. I say, no problem. I got one for you in PA. They go, I haven't got my license. And they miss out on income for 10, 12 weeks. And it could be at a time where you're paying rent. So it's really important to pay attention to state licensing issues. So you go to this private practice group. This is now February of 2019. Tell us about that experience.
It was okay. I learned a lot of clinical things. I learned how a private practice operates. I learned how it's very different than a DSO. But just like there's good and bad DSOs, there's good and bad private practices. I was working at a pretty good private practice. The things that kept coming up again were the autonomy issues, and you're not in control of your own future.
What's a good example of the autonomy issues that someone could kind of mentally take a picture of if they're a dental student? Autonomy is a big word, which makes sense. What was an example of that in that private practice?
So plenty of people are paid either a salary or a percentage of production. And usually your salary has something to do with how much you're producing logically or collecting. Something that I didn't think to ask was what goes towards my production? Because I did a lot of things that I didn't get credit towards. And that was just a business decision. And at the end of the day, it being a business decision is kind of crummy because I never was paid for a single exam I did. It went to the house. Yeah, and I understand the debate between x-rays about do the hygienists get it, did the doctors get it? I understand that debate. And at the end of the day, that should be expressed and talked about before you sign any contract. I signed a contract saying that I would be paid a percentage of my production with a lower salary, and then I would get more on top of it. Barely ever hit my bonus because I was never paid for a single exam I ever did.
And just so we can share with our
4 columns on a Saturday, every single Saturday.
That's what that is, Delaney. I think it's a D word for you. It's demoralizing more than it is money demoralizing, even though I know it feels but just so everyone can catch up here, they're watching, it's very easy if you work 20 days to do in your world 300 plus exams, right? And 300 plus exams at even $40 an exam is $12,000. And if you're making a third of that, it's $4,000. I mean, one of the things I do with our associates, there's a great content piece, How to Speak by Patrick Winston, where I'm on maternity leave. You should watch it. It's a great YouTube video on how to connect with people, share your message. It's building a fence around your idea. What is your idea? What is it not? Our associates, I say, hey, if you work with us 200 days, you're going to make $120,000 no matter what. You're going to be paid as an employee. You're going to get these benefits, and not but we give you production-based bonuses. But when they sit across from me, they know, okay, I'm going to make this money, and we hope to exceed it. And I think people are happy. It's not rocket science when you manage their expectations well. And it sounds like yours were a little mismanaged there.
They were, and it was a communication error on my part and on his. My employer was a nice person who is not a great communicator. And when it comes down to it, it's crummy, especially when the world starts to melt and COVID happens and all you're looking for is clear communication from employers and you don't get it. And that's when you start to realize, wow, I really am not in control of my own future right now because I don't own my practice.
So you've been through the DSO. Now how long did you stay at this private practice group in Alabama?
Almost a year and a half.
So then now are we at February of 2020?
Yep, right at COVID.
Right at COVID, and you're going to make a decision. Tell our audience, because we repurpose this, we send this out. So I'm talking with Dr. Delaney Spalding, awesome, newish dentist. Still, you're moving into the early medium age dentist category at 5 years, but you worked at a DSO, you worked at private practice. Now you want to buy your own practice. Buy or start? Tell me that.
I was debating on going to pediatric residency. I was debating on going into teaching. I needed a change. I didn't know I wanted to buy a practice. That seems scary and overwhelming. And I didn't know if I wanted to do that. So then when COVID hit, I asked my husband if he would be okay if we just kind of put my career on hold and we started a family instead. And he said, no, like
Yeah.
your education was expensive. So we are going to have you work. And that was fine. But I told him I'm not happy with how things are going. So I really want to, I want to look to buy my own practice if we're not going to have kids anytime soon. That way I can treat it like my baby and I can grow that thing up. And he said, sure. He said, start looking. How he didn't think I could do that much damage in a short period of time. We started watching the Howard Fran YouTube videos that were like filmed in 1999 of the, what's it called? The dental CEO.
Dental MBA. And I want to share with our, I put together a series on how to buy a dental practice that my team can drop in. It's a 5-part YouTube series that I tell people, I interview a dental focused accountant, a dental focused attorney, talk about brokers, because you think finding a job has a lot of scary factors. That is truly, to stay on brand, baby talk compared to the practice, because I just want to, as you probably know, practices have a difficult return policy. Jobs, you can just kind of bounce from them, right? It can be like a bad dating scenario where you're not as tied. I do want to share, for responsibility, you should have dental focused attorneys review your contract, because sometimes you want to leave a job and they say, hey, you got to wait 90 days to do so or pay us back. But now so you have no children at this time. It's February 2020. You have no children or no practice.
No children, no practice, and kind of in limbo, kind of unemployed. The world's getting shut down.
So if this was a real TV show, I'd say to be continued next week so people would watch in. So now we got Dr. Delaney Spalding sharing her story. She's now 2 years out of dental school, done a DSO private practice, talks to her husband, say, hey, you should explore buying a practice. So you have no children and no practice. So a lot's happened in 3 years. Tell us what's happened.
And then I didn't even find this practice. I looked at a few different offices and all of them I walked into and I saw that they were just kind of dated. I looked at a lot of offices. I looked at 8 that I like really compared and like ran the numbers on and had my spreadsheets all figured out about how much it's going to cost. And I didn't understand any of the numbers at all. I was just like, when I walk in, is this a place that I would want to work? Because that's the only experience you have if you just have a job, is like, would I want to work here? And all of them told me no. Like when I walked into them, they're like, I would have to do a lot in order to make this a place that I would be happy at. And then my mom posted on an Alabama dental group saying that she's moving to the area and looking to buy a practice. And if anyone's interested in selling a practice, to message her. I don't think she did this with my permission, but I didn't really care because it wasn't true. She wasn't moving to Alabama.
I like that creative way to get attention. I really appreciate your mom's creative way to get attention.
Moms are helpful. And it turned out well. So the person who previously owned my practice messaged her and said that she's interested in selling. And my mom just forwarded me the information and I gave that person a call, saw this practice the same day, walked in and immediately knew. I didn't see any numbers. I walked in and like this, it just felt like something that I could do. And I had my husband come look at it like 2 days later, and he said, how did this happen so quickly? And I said,
and a couple of things I want to point out about your story, which is great. And your mom's the ultimate connector there. But I'm a practice broker and us dentists, what's the word for it? We're insane. We're not stable. When we do a case, we want to know the patient's 3rd grade teacher and favorite color, even though it has nothing to do with the case. So I'm a broker and I say to dentists, oh, hey, I have this practice for sale. And they go, how many new patients do they see in January of 2019? I go, do you want to see the practice? They go, what's their percentage profit? I say, first, you got to see the practice. So I really commend you because you're buying a place where you have to put your physical form in every single day. So while the numbers are incredibly important, and while the numbers of new patients are, going to see a practice as soon as possible is what I recommend buyers to do for 2 reasons. You had context. You had seen ones you didn't want to see. So when Patrick Winston would really like you, he's not alive anymore, but so you really built a fence around your idea because you knew what you didn't want. And then when you finally were able to see what you wanted, it made sense to you. So you like it. And now tell us a little bit about you go home and look at the numbers part.
Yeah, I saw the office. I looked at her. She's in her late 30s, early 40s. Like, why are you selling?
Yeah.
COVID hit, she has 3 kids. She really likes homeschooling them. And she said she heard a higher power tell her that it is time. And she thought I was delivered right at the exact time. And it's an unusual transition. You don't usually have someone who built a practice for 10 years, built it from scratch, and it's a beautiful office, and they walk away from it, but they did. So, yeah.
I like that. People get a message, it's like my team members. They say this is the perfect place for them to work. It's their hashtag blessed to be here. But I like that seller said that you were the right person for her. I do want to add, just so I continue to share the reality, she's selling her practice at the age of 40. Who's supporting her after she sells her practice? Is she married and has a husband doing that? Does she have a life savings? Did she win the lottery?
No,
it's unusual to do that.
She's also married. I think that for however many things that we have stacked against us as being women in dentistry, a lot of us are not sole breadwinners. And it's not to say that there aren't, but I have the benefit and support of having a husband who has a career. I don't have 3 kids at home with a spouse I am also supporting. And I really feel for people I went to dental school with that they understood that was their reality when they graduated, and they had a different type of pressure that was put on them because of that. And I didn't face that, and she didn't face that either. But she also ran the practice that way previously. I came into a practice that was being run like very much a hobby, very much a side gig. It was not being run like the business it could have produced as. And because of that, she kind of walked away from a diamond in the rough.
So I like this. I want to, so we're now looking at this practice. When is your son born? What's his birthday?
May of 2021. I found out I was pregnant 1.5 months after buying the practice.
So when did you buy the practice? You bought the practice in, what is this?
June
March
of 2020. June of 2020.
June of
June
2020.
19th. I walked in the door the first time on like May 16th, and then I bought it June 19th.
So dentists never forget 2 things: when they become a practice owner parent, and when they become a real parent, if they choose to do that. So now you've really accelerated a lot of life things, which I'm sure people are championing on the side, saying, Dr. Lane, this is awesome. You're a practice owner, you're a parent, but tell the people, how did that make you feel? Was it's anxious, excited, enthusiastic? Give us some of the nacho plate of your emotions behind the scenes.
I had never had a more emotional series of events happen in my life. Buying a practice and learning everything there is about dental business, while also not being a good dentist. I mean, I literally just graduated. Learning all of that, and then finding out you're pregnant with your husband who said, let's not have a baby right now. It's a lot of stress.
Yeah.
It was the definition of an accidental pregnancy that we made the absolute best of.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so it was a lot of long nights of figuring out mainly office stuff, and the office distracted me in the best possible way. So like very much 12, 14, 16-hour days at the office, trying to get my systems in place so that once the baby was here, things would have a cadence to them and it would feel like my office. Because I felt like I bought a practice and immediately was leaving on maternity leave, which is terrifying. But by the time that the baby came, everything just started working out the way it needed to. But it really is because kind of like I buckled down and realized I needed to have a plan for how to be successful for the next 2+ years.
I think that's awesome. Tell us a little bit about this part. You know, I know you have a great parental support, and your mom's a fantastic practice owner and business person, you know, but in terms of evaluating the practice to buy, like you feel it's good, you get some numbers, tell me as much as you're comfortable with, you know, but like, just so, because I know other people are, did you have an accountant look at the numbers? Did you have an attorney help you with the contract? What kind of bank did you go to? Who was on your team telling you that, hey, Delaney, I know you want to walk into this place to work, but I've seen dentists do this and totally ruin their financial lives because they become emotionally attached to cabinets and not as into the numbers. So now tell me, who kind of helped you feel confident about the numbers in the practice?
Yeah, I didn't really have much of a CPA relationship other than the fact that my parents have always had their same CPA, Jeff Forrestal, and it was like, all right, we'll have Jeff look at the numbers. I'm like, okay, sure. So gave all my numbers to my parent CPA, who is now very much my CPA. And got a pretty solid assessment, and they returned back telling me like, it's not a bad idea, but there's areas that could be improved upon.
And I want to kind of
that-
continue to reinforce, I don't repeat myself, reinforce. You had a spouse with a pretty stable life
Yes.
professionally, both
Yep.
economically and in flux. He wasn't about to be promoted to the president of his company, and I'm not going to ask you what he earns, but I'm just going to sort of say he was stable financially. So that was an important part, because you were in kind of total chaos. So it's important, you know, I say this, you know, my wife works with me at these companies now. It's a lot of fun. Our startups have a lot of chaos. If she was also doing a photography startup while I'm doing dental nacho startup, it would be very, very bad for our family. So you need a spouse who kind of has stability and time, I believe, when you're going through these transitions.
And when we ultimately sat down and said, okay, let's buy the practice, there was the conversation on the table of, can I do a startup? And I got a resounding no. And he was saying no, but also I understood it's a no. I could not deal with the idea of not having a solid income for 3 years. Like, and it's not that this would be an amazing income buying a practice and flipping it basically, but it was more stable than the idea of having to do a slow grow, especially nothing was built. So it would have been like a year of no income
and I want to point out, you know, part of these shows, I share these resources. So I'm on my podcast, thedentalmigos.com with Rob Montgomery. We talk about startups and acquisitions. I'm a broker. I've only done acquisitions. I have great startup sponsors. My team will drop that link in the chat. Also, please drop our link to our whole menu of advisors. But startups are a totally different animal, and it comes with more risk and probably more reward to some degree, but a lot more energy. And I think I'm sure there's someone out there in my 60,000 member world that says, I did a startup and had a baby on the same day and competed in a CrossFit competition. I know they're out there, but what I'll share with you is startups are a totally different energy when patients aren't used to coming to the practice. So you had a CPA help know the numbers work, came up with a valuation, you take over the practice. Tell us a little bit about this. And I want to ask these questions authentically. You ask them. Now you had the previous owner was female and you're female, right? But you are a new face. You're not the same face. So
I will say, coming back in COVID, when we were complete PPE, it took a while for people to figure out, yes, this isn't my dentist I've been seeing.
That's good. I like that.
Yeah, similar build, hair in a hairnet with a face mask.
This is good. Buy a practice from someone who kind of looks like you. That's my, but tell me the adjustments. You're Dr. Delaney, you buy the practice, you help this seller realize her hopes and dreams. Now you're there. The adjustment of the patients, was that difficult, medium, easy? The adjustments of the patients when you buy a practice to getting used to it.
I would say once I was firmly in the practice and I bought it, they were mainly accepting because they weren't expecting their dentist to retire, but their dentist wasn't going anywhere else. I wasn't buying a practice from a 30-year-old that was going down the street and doing another startup or joining another office. So it's pretty much they stay with the office or they go find a different dentist.
Yeah, I love that.
So they were willing to try me out. And we told them that we are going through a process of figuring out how insurance is working at our office. And pretty much 6 months from now, we will be able to tell you what insurance changes may reflect to you. But in general, personality wise, none of the patients, I think one didn't like me, but like overall, I'm an agreeable person. I didn't come in and try to treatment plan every single possible.
And I also want to share, you share so many tips on Dental Nachos. Please use your name in the search bar. You do so many great like explainer videos. So I really appreciate you sharing that.
I like to make things.
Yeah,
I especially like to make sheets of paper. So if you want a sheet of paper to say just any type of information, I am your girl. Yeah.
I don't know anybody who likes sheets of paper all around all the time, but now tell me this, the team, how did the team adjust to you? Because it's a shock to them, no matter how happy ending it is for their own. How was the team adjustment to you?
This seems kind of interesting, but the person who I bought the practice from, her front desk employee was coming back from maternity leave at the same time that I was buying the practice. And she told me she would need to arrive a half hour late to work and leave a half hour early every single day in order to pick up her kid from childcare. She wasn't an amazing employee to begin with. And that was enough for me to be like, it's not gonna be a good fit only because like
like
I'm
that.
brand new. I need someone to come in early. I need someone to stay late with me. So she understood. That was the only real employee like turnover we had. I still have the original hygienist and a half that she had, and I have another hygienist. And the assistant was gone before I showed up because of COVID. She was
Now,
18.
I like this,
She
and
left.
I want to see when your son comes in the story, but I'm not ready to bring that in
Yeah.
yet. And I would do want to, people, someone did ask a question. Let's just pause where they said, how do you discuss your time off without it feeling like you're taking money out of your pocket for your employees? So this is
Like vacation?
Vacation time. Yes.
I do my schedule a year and a half in advance. I
So
know
they're
that's a
prepared.
super, yeah, it's a super planning mindset, but right now in our staff room, I have the next, from now until December is on display in our office. And it says every single day that we're off, if they would like to look for any type of per diem type, not per diem,
It's a
whatever
great
temporary.
system.
Yeah, if they have so much notice. They also, we do PTO that accrues as they work. So if they want to kind of allocate their PTO knowing it's coming up, then they kind of plan their vacations around it. I don't feel bad as long as I give them notice.
Yeah.
If I
think that's
can't
fair.
give, yeah, if I can't give them notice, I'm a good person and I tend to pay them because it's not their fault if something comes up. I had jury duty. We had to shut down the office for 2 days. They got paid because it sucked for me.
Yeah.
It didn't have to suck
How
for
many
them.
team members do you have total working with you? 4?
I always cannot immediately figure out myself. So I work here. I have one assistant. I used to have 2, but now I have 1 and I work really hard. I have 1 full-time hygienist, 1 very part-time hygienist, 1 part-time hygienist, 1 front desk, and 1 office support system who is my nanny. So
Awesome.
7.
So you have like
including me.
a basketball team there. So
Yes.
I tell people, and it doesn't mean I was right, but I'm saying, hey, I've acquired 3 practices, one where the dentist sadly passed away, never met him, one where the dentist came over and worked with us, and one where the dentist said, hey, Paul, buy my charts, I'm out of here. And what I share as one of my tips is don't change anything for 6 months unless it's illegal, immoral, or unethical. But it sounds like you changed something big with insurance, which I really admire. Tell me a little bit about your decision to go from an insurance-based practice to a fee-for-service practice.
Well, for your 3 rules, I find being in network with insurance pretty unethical.
Yeah,
It's not unethical. Tons of dentists are in network, but I do not see the point or understanding of delivering the same quality of care with different limiting factors of in-network prices, depending on your contractual
I'm
obligations.
totally with you. I always say to people, because you hear us, don't go out and drop all your plans. Don't go up and sign up for plans, but make a plan about your plans and make you happy. So if I wish I did something sooner, I wish I paid attention to this transition sooner.
Yeah.
So I like this. How long till you decided to divorce yourself from the insurance plans in the office?
When I was at my associateship with the private practice, they were out of network with everything except 1 insurance company. Because of that, they were only charging lab fees for that 1 insurance company whenever that patient needed lab work done. That is when I put my foot down and said, that's not right.
Yeah.
I wouldn't do that. Plenty of people do it. I wasn't going to, and I was told that's how it's done. And when I bought this practice, I just said, I'm not doing it that way. So I just did it the right way and dropped everything and collected our full fee for everything.
I know I really admire this leadership decision, but I know this comes with it. You know, we removed ourselves from being a network with our biggest plan over time. We had about 1.5 years ago. But one thing my front desk team said was, great, Paul, but people are kind of yelling at us up here. So I did the emails, I did the conversations. Mm-hmm. But what happens is the insurance companies kind of send a letter to your patient saying your dentist now hates you. They kind of send this. So they said, hey, everybody, just so you know, your dentist no longer is a network, blah, blah. So I made them a video and people can you guys can put my text words
so
to 215.
That is,
how did you handle that?
That's a downside in waiting. So say don't change anything for 6 months. That potentially means you're credentialing with the new insurance company that you weren't credentialed with because you're not going to change anything. If you have a mindset of you want to drop the insurance, but you aren't originally credentialed with them, never go in network.
So I think you've got to explain this slowly because it's very important. You've never credentialed with them at all.
I did for the DSO. I credentialed with every
What about your practice? What about the practice you bought?
So the practice that I bought was in network she would not let me file out under her name whatsoever. So I was like registering with my social security number while we were going through the transition. That was a mess, but I was registering and credentialing with them as an out-of-network provider. The only insurance I was in network with was one insurance, Blue Cross Blue Shield, and that was with the private practice I was in previously. That's the only one I technically had to drop. But as the patients came in, they had the mentality of I was now dropping their insurance, even though I was never in network. But the office that they were going to was now run by someone who is not in network. So
how did you guys
that's the
handle
benefit.
those? I mean, how did you handle those conversations with the patients when they, even if they just ask curiously, right? Not every patient's
Oh, yeah.
yelling, but I mean,
No.
if I went to my dermatologist and they said, hey, we don't take spoiled dermatology PPO, I wouldn't just run out, but I might be like, oh, how's it work now? What happened? So how are you handling those conversations?
Initially with so much kindness and then a lot of thick skin, because
Yeah.
when I first bought the practice, the point was keep the patients in here. So we told them we will be writing off any difference while we're going through this transition right now. So for like 4 to 6 months, we had no idea how insurance was going to pay at all. So as they were coming in, we were kind of developing our plan and our strategy, but we were telling the patients, you're going to have no difference while we're going through this transition, which is allowed. When you're in a period of flux and transition, insurance companies have some leeway of saying like, look,
so to them, just to explain to our audience and what they're watching now, it felt to them similar for their first thing. So you're sort of like, hey,
yes,
let's figure this out together. First one is going to be kind of on me, so to speak.
yes. We wrote off a lot of money, and you have to go into it understanding. You can't say now we're going to be out of network, and that first time period with us meeting all of these new patients, we wrote off a lot, but that was a strategic decision in order to at least establish the relationship.
Yeah.
In order to have these people so I can have the conversation with them. And we have killed everyone with pre-auths. Some people hate it. I think if you have the systems in place, yeah, you can follow up on a pre-auth within like MetLife 1 day, some of them 7 days. If we are running pre-auths for every preventative treatment. And if a patient needs emergency or same day things, we let them know we like to run a pre-auth. We can absolutely do this. This is our full fee. We have a pretty good estimate of what we're going to pay. We can't guarantee anything, but pretty much we lost a lot of patients. The patients that stayed, it's not because they had zero out of pocket for their preventative. It's because they felt like we were being very transparent with them and we could always tell them exactly what their out of pocket was going to be.
I mean, Dr. John Kois is one of my idols. I got to speak with him once. Dr. Jason Tenorio, who I went to dental school with, who's a multi-practice owner in upstate New York. Raving Fans is a fantastic book. John Kois makes his team read it. Jason Tenorio does. It's just really defining your business model. And you've just explained that the people who stayed got what you did, as simple as that. And the people who didn't get what you did, and you just moved on accordingly. So you're doing this, Delaney. So you're a practice owner, you're pregnant. And I know, I think, unless I bored your mom, so I think she's still on here. You're going to give birth. Tell us about, people I know you're about to give birth. How are you handling this transition? Which licensed dentist was coming to rescue you, and how did that go?
So I'm sure I've apologized to my mom at some point about this, but when I found out I was pregnant, we told them in October or so, and I immediately told my mom, I'll figure it out. You don't have to come handle my maternity leave. And she was hurt, understandably. It wasn't because I didn't want her to cover my maternity leave. I felt like I ruined her life when I bought my practice. Both of my parents said, this isn't the best decision, but like, we will support you completely. And they did. I bought my dental practice. They pretty much lived in Alabama for 2 months at a moment's notice. And
where do they live?
In Georgia. So it's 3 hours away, but they have a dog and like a life over there. Yeah. And they just, like parents do, they just came over and helped because awesome. Parents. So I felt like I ruined her summer of 2020. And then I found out I was pregnant and due in May of 2021. And I'm like, I'm not going to do this to you again. But she did. She came over. She worked the schedule we agreed upon. She doesn't like mornings, and that's fine. But
what would you have done? So people sometimes unfairly give children of dentists a lot of grief. as if they have everything perfect, because I'm a child of a dentist, and it just comes with pros and cons. Way more pros, right? But I took over practice of my dad, who's like,
And I would never.
you're the new kid. And, I used to be in my 7th grade class. But what would you have done if your mom was not able to be your associate? How would you have handled that challenge?
It would have been harder. I think that I would have had to bring someone on per diem, just trying to figure out covering the office, but it would have accelerated my maternity leave. This maternity leave, I'm only taking about 4 weeks and planning on coming back consistently.
Just so, spoiler alert, you're currently pregnant again for people watching. So how many weeks were you out with your first child?
We were scheduled to be about 7, and it was just about 7.
So 7 weeks, your mom's literally babysitting the practice, probably enjoyed babysitting her grandchild more than the practice. Now she goes back to her life. You go back to owning the practice. You've got your in-office nanny. This is great. And you said, life is not easy enough. I'm going to add another permanent roommate to or at least 18-year roommate. So now catch us up to where you are now. Because it's only 2023, right? So it's only at the time of this February 2023. When is this second small human being due?
End of April. So I waited at least till the first was about a year old. He comes to work with me every day. He went to the ADA meeting in Las Vegas. He is a fixture in this office. He is very much my buddy, my lunchtime cohort. And I said, this turned out okay. And because it turned out okay, I'm willing to do it again. And this time, I'm telling you, this entire pregnancy, essentially stress-free. The office is running fine. I know exactly what to expect when I'm coming back. And I have more of a support system here than I would at home. My husband has great paternity leave coverage. I think he gets 16 weeks off. So if he wants to use all of it, fantastic. But still, I come here and every person I employ is a mom. And awesome. I just have all hands on deck. Everyone loves my kids, and my hygienist also brings her son with them. We are co-parenting all of these children together, and my parents will be here. So I plan on being probably more at the office than anything else without the stress of doing a DO on number 2.
So your mom's going to come and babysit the practice again.
Yeah, but
for
I'll
5 weeks. And then how does the patients, how did they adapt? Just even though I know it's your mom, which probably comes with a lot of benefits, it's still not you, right? And how have they been with her babies? Are they glad the practice is open? Do they take it, in stride?
Because it's my mom. I mean, I'm like, it's my mom. But my patients tell me how much they love my mom, and I love my mom. I became a dentist because I worked with my mom, but it's just weird to think. I was so concerned about everything the patients thought when I bought the practice, to the point that I didn't tell anyone I was pregnant until I could not hide it. In which case, a lot of them were surprised when I was on maternity leave, because 6 months ago I wasn't pregnant because they didn't see me. Well, this time around, as patients were coming in and we're rescheduling them for their 6-month appointments, and I'm saying, by the way, I'm pregnant and I'll be on maternity leave. And they're like, your mom covering again? Because I'm having the kids right around the same time of the year. And I'm like, yeah. They're like, great, awesome. So it's nice to even have a familiar face because I've seen her before too.
And if we add some value in that thread about, I appreciate all you contribute to our online community. There were some moms saying, hey, I did too much at once. If I went back, I probably wouldn't. I know I'm kind of reinforcing this. If you didn't have your mom and you were hiring an associate that wasn't your mom, that would make it, in your words, tougher to manage all of this.
Mentally so much tougher. The reason that I bring my kid to work with me every day is because it makes my brain happy. And the idea of having an unknown figure at the office makes my brain sad.
And I know your mom does a lot of great work with this, and we do too. There aren't that many dentists out there that are saying like, hey, I can work somewhere for 5 weeks and be done. Your mom is the perfect candidate. She's happy to be finished in 5 weeks. But if you do transplant someone to work with you for 5 weeks, many times there isn't that great of a locum tenens system built into dentistry, which is a problem for happy things like maternity leave, sad things like injury, tragic things like death and disability. So it's a real vulnerability for practice owners, because
especially sole practice owners, that is a huge issue. If you are the owner operator and if you are not there, and we can't even have hygiene operating without the dentist in the building. So your office shuts down if anything
Yeah, I mean,
happens to you.
tag the dental, my two friends do the dental safety net, and they're trying to create this system in communities where people have each other's back. And if someone gets hurt or injured or tragic circumstances or something, that someone covers. But the main problem is, if my friend down the street said to me, hey, I need you to cover my office, I'm like, I'm at my own office, right? It's like, I'm eating my own plate of annoying dental stuff, right? So it's like, I think that that's important for everyone to realize. So I don't want to keep you too much longer. We'll have more of this, but I want you to and we're not done just yet, but what is your practice website? If people want to go there and just check out what you do, what's the practice website?
It is rossbridgedentistry.com. And that is ROSS, Rossbridge.
And if we do some speed things, how did I really love what you shared. You admitted and said, I wasn't a very good dentist. What I think is funny, and I love young dentists, they go, Paul, when I get to an office, how come I can't do the big cases? I go, would you want you to do the big case on yourself? They go, no. I go, well, that's another person, right? So I go, you got to start with the fundamentals. How did you invest in your dentistry, and what did that look like to become a better dentist while all this was happening? What's
interesting is I invested so much more in business classes. I guess I didn't pay for them, but like, I feel like I entrenched myself in learning everything about dental business, almost at the expense of, I didn't spend a ton of time and money on dental actual CE. I did do Botox and filler, and that's been a huge practice builder. But something that has helped me so much is I invested in technology that made me better. My mom introduced me to the Isolite. I fought her on it because she's my mom. Isolite's fantastic. It's amazing.
I mean, actually, I used to say this. They used to be a sponsor, and I'm with your mom. I said, dentists should wake up in the morning and be like, look in the mirror and be like, do you like that person? Yes. Get the Isolite.
Exactly.
I don't understand. If a dentist doesn't use an Isolite, have some sort of problem. It keeps the patient's mouth open. They stop talking. If you freaking drop something, it just sits there, right? The procedures go faster because the patient stays still. It's like a blanket over a parakeet's cage. So,
my dentistry is worlds better since using the Isolite. I have an intraoral camera. We now have an intraoral scanner. I use Dandy. I like Dandy.
Yeah, they're a sponsor. The Dandy's a sponsor of our group too. So tell me this, what business helped the most? Just the concept. Was it managing the team, knowing the numbers, being a leader, hiding your crying inside when things go sideways? What's kind of the thing that helped the most? Like conceptually, like when you walk in and lead that place and you got your team, you got to pay bills, you got to pretend things are okay when they're not okay. Someone's saying, oh, I'd like to take business C like Delaney. Which focus would you put on?
I am emotional and pregnant. There is nothing that ranks higher than my parents' support.
That's awesome. And what I'll share, I think that's a great thing, is if you don't have parents, find support elsewhere. There's so many people
you can buy
want
support.
To support you. But if you ask for support too late, you have to develop relationships with mentors and people who can support you. And it could be the specialist in your town. It could be another mom online. It could be someone who could text Dr. Darcy, who's doing our boost camp. She said she was having a personal meltdown, and she left her office and went into her orthodontist office and sat in her office till her orthodontist came and helped her. And I said, that's a pretty amazing orthodontist, because you had the comfort zone to be having a personal meltdown, leave your office, drive to your orthodontist office, go sit in her private office and wait for her to be done with the patient. So, find your support system, and people who do have parents aren't always there. So I love that. Now, to end on kind of a fun thing, you are famous for Family Feud. Tell us why you're famous. I love this. I was walking my dog when I saw it. I laughed out loud. I couldn't believe this was the answer. You can PG-ify it if you want, but you did pretty much PG-ify the answer. Tell us a little about Family Feud and why you're famous.
It is newfound fame. So my family competed on Family Feud. We won all 5 episodes. I am particularly well known on YouTube now. For the 4th episode, the question that ended up winning us that game was, what did Lincoln come riding into town on?
And the first word, train.
Train, and carriage, I did get that answer. Train was the first answer.
Carriage. What was
Boat?
It? Was boat, maybe. And then it was, you were down to your last strike. I was watching this. And when I heard you say it, I go, no way. This is just for the funny of TV. No way this is true. And your answer was what?
Yes, my answer was Miss Lincoln, his wife, or Mrs. Lincoln.
And 2 people said that was it, right?
Yes, and it's amazing because each one of those filming episodes is about an hour long. They cut out about a 10-minute section of him dying from me saying that, because he's right. We were very mellow mannered the entire time. They told us that we need to get more exciting, and that apparently won Steve Harvey over of, okay, we can do this.
Awesome. Well, we're going to have a sequel with you, whether it's post baby number 2, Rocky 2. You're awesome, Dr. Delaney. Everyone watching here, my goal is to make Dennis happier and less annoyed. If you text the word happy to 215-798-9897, my team will put that into the chat. You can get access to over 200 hours of complimentary CE and tips for free. So Dr. Delaney, I'm going to take us off Facebook Live, but you were just truly awesome. I truly appreciate what you did for us here.
Thank you.